Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee on the 15th of August 2022. My name is Councillor Gary Thompson and I am the chair of this committee. The Local Government Act 2020 enables council to hold virtual meetings with councillors participating remotely by electronic communication. The Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting is being live streamed on the Council website to enable public viewing of the proceedings, including councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on Council's website as soon as practically possible after the meeting. Should technical problems be encountered during the meeting may be adjourned until the problem is rectified, or if need be, the meeting will be postponed. I acknowledge that all councillors are present on the screen for tonight's meeting. There are also officers in attendance who will be introduced when they present their reports. Essentially, the purpose of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee is to deal with issues under the Planning and Environment Act and the Building Act. This committee has delegated authority to make decisions on behalf of council. I'm going to move to the order of business. Mr. Wee, are there any apologies this evening?
Through you, Chair, there are no apologies this evening.
Thank you for that. Item 1, adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting held on the 1st of August. Councillors, I'm in search of a motion to adopt the meeting from that 1st of August. I've got Councillor Sinfield and seconder, Councillor Addis. I will now put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 2, conflict of declaration of any interest of any councillor or council officer. Councillors, I do have a conflict of interest under 3.1, the Draft Social and Affordable Housing Compact. When we get to that item, I will vacate my seat. Are there any other conflicts to be noted? There being one, I will hand over to our governance. Thank you, Mr. Wee.
The next item will be the presentation of officer reports, and item 3.1 is the next item to be presented. So Councillor Thompson has left the meeting. In the absence of Councillor Thompson as chair, I'm calling for nominations for temporary chair for this item. Councillor Addis, you are nominating.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wee. I'd like to nominate Councillor Park, who's most recent chair of Urban Planning.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Is there a seconder for that nomination? Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Park, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Are there any other nominations? There being no other nominations, I hand over to Councillor Park as temporary chair for this item.
Thank you. So item 3.1, Draft Social and Affordable Housing Compact. That report will be presented by David Cowan, Manager Strategic Planning, and Fiona Brown, Manager Community Planning and Development.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report tonight is to provide councillors with an overview of the Draft Social and Affordable Housing Compact and outline council's response to the draft compact. The Social and Affordable Housing Compact is being developed by Homes Victoria in partnership with the Municipal Association of Victoria as an initiative of the Big Housing Build. Homes Victoria states that the draft compact aims to strengthen collaboration between Homes Vic and local government in the planning, delivery and management of social and affordable housing and homelessness services. On the 3rd of June, Homes Vic wrote to all Victorian Council CEOs inviting their consultation on the draft compact. Local government was only given 7 weeks to review the draft compact and provide a response by Sunday the 24th of July. Council recognises that there is a significant need to increase public, social and affordable housing and homelessness services for very low and moderate income earners, and undertake significant advocacy to state and federal government to achieve these outcomes. Our advocacy work to date has achieved 111 public and 67 affordable housing units at Markham Avenue, far greater than the 62 public housing units proposed initially. At Bill Street, there will now be 103 homes for public housing tenants and 103 affordable homes, again greater than the 40 public housing units initially proposed. However, our advocacy around the inclusion of community rooms in both Markham Avenue and Bill Street to deliver support services to residents on site was not taken up, despite there being community rooms in the previous housing, which were used by a range of services to deliver on-site programs. This is a lost opportunity, particularly in view of strategic priority 3 around coordinating services for people who live in public, social and affordable housing. It also doesn't give much comfort that there will be genuine and authentic engagement with council and the community, despite strategic priority 4 in the draft compact. In addition to our advocacy, council has a homelessness protocol that guides our response to reports of homelessness. We have an officer who works closely with the Salvation Army, and no funding is received for this position. Outreach services such as the Salvation Army are in need of increased funding to work with council and other agencies to respond to increasing incidents of people who are homeless, particularly now that the hotels program has ceased. Our advocacy has been driven by council's position that the provision of public, social and affordable housing and homelessness services is a state and federal government responsibility, and that council land and resources will not be divested for such use. I'll now hand over to David for our recommendation.
Thank you, Fiona, and through you, Chair. As outlined in the report, there's significant concern that the draft compact, as it inappropriately positions local governments' roles and responsibilities in the provision of public, social and affordable housing and homelessness services. A central tenet of the draft compact is council making its land available for public, social and affordable land. This is particularly evident in the 4 strategic priorities outlined in the compact and which officers have responded to in the report. As feedback on the draft compact was due by Sunday, the 24th of July 2022, the CEO wrote to Homes Victoria providing feedback in line with council's endorsed position that the draft compact be redrafted with the core premise that the responsibility to provide the public, social and affordable housing resides with the state government. It is not a shared responsibility to which ratepayers, funds or resources should be committed. In this letter, the CEO also advised the report would be presented to the Urban Planning Delegated Committee on tonight on the 15th of August, seeking endorsement of council's feedback. We will advise Homes Vic and the MAV of the outcome of tonight's meeting. The recommendation before you is that UPDC endorse the response sent to the CEO by the CEO on the 22nd of July to Homes Vic with council's feedback on the draft social and affordable housing compact. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If we just take that slide down, please. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Councillor Stavro and then Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Councillor Parker, through you. Look, I have one question. I mean, obviously there's a laudable aims to provide social and affordable housing, but I am concerned about putting responsibility on council that it doesn't have. And my first question is, am I correct in believing that a state body like Big Track has got a large substantial land holdings within Boroondara above and beyond what they're leasing to for transport services, and that could actually easily use for this type of affordable housing?
Mr. Storer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I can confirm two things. One is that VicTrack does own land in Burundara. Annual report. What you will see is that there is about $3.5 billion worth of land which is owned by VicTrack, which is not in fact committed to the running of the rail network. Now, that's not to say all of that land is sitting vacant, but it does represent a very substantial land holding, which in fact could be used towards these purposes. I think the other point to make is that, and this is an interesting example, if you look at the property at 46 Harp Road, which is right beside the Burundara Police Station, it's been vacant for a very, very long time. That property is owned by Vic Roads, now the Department of Transport, and some years ago, Council tried to have that property transferred to it as an offset for open space loss at the Kew Cottages site. And we were not able to have that land transferred, not because there was any particular reason for it to be retained. It wasn't required for road widening. It's not required for any expansion to the police station. And yet it was still being held. So here's a vacant site in Burundara, which could in fact be used for the very purposes we're having a conversation about this evening. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that there is government land, which should really be first port of call whenever the government is looking to meet these objectives, and clearly we share in those objectives.
Thank you. Councillor Stavro, does that, do you have any further questions or?
I do, Councillor Park. I had one more, but Mr. Stewart has already answered that. It relates to any other property that's available, and he's answered it by referring to a property that I didn't know about next to the police station. And my other question is that look, I've been involved, and a lot of others have been involved in this community, particularly in Studley Ward, with Kew Cottages over the many years. It's been a big issue, as you know, and I guess one of the things that I wanted to understand is that, given that this particular program aims to grow social housing and also it touches on special needs, and certainly that community had a lot of special needs people being displaced. My question is that, do we know if funds that were received by the sale of those lands and how much those funds were received? Is there transparency towards that? And also, have any of those funds been earmarked for this type of social housing? That's an important thing to understand, particularly given that we're asked to go into good faith agreements.
Mr. Stura.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When the Kew Cottages site was converted into Kew Residential Services and developed by the Walker Corporation on the basis the state made the site available to them, the commitment given by the government at the time was that the profits made from the sale of that site would in fact go into disability services in the state. There hasn't been any means by which we can track whether that in fact occurred. So the profit which has been achieved and how those funds have been distributed is not something which has been publicly made available to us.
Councillor Stavro.
I would wish for a more transparent answer, but I think that the CEO has answered as much as he can. Thank you for that.
Okay. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. And excuse me as I'm suffering some technical hiccups at home with my IT system, so hopefully you can hear me. On page 2 of the report, or page 4 of the business paper, there's a statement in the final paragraph that reads, the state government, pardon me, hold on, I've lost my position. It refers to the state government, hold on, I'm on the wrong page now. It refers to the state government having constrained council, Burundara Council, from engaging in providing feedback and precluding the community from providing feedback in relation to the public housing developments in Burundara that are currently active. Could someone explain how Burundara Council was constrained and the community constrained from providing feedback?
Mr. Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if I take, for example, well, there are two steps here. One is that normally with the applications of this nature, council would be the responsible authority and would be dealing with the planning application for the development of the site. In both the case of Markham and also Bill Street, the state government actually removed council from its normal role and took upon itself the role to deal with the planning matters relating to the site. The consequence of that was that council didn't perform its usual role in engaging with its community and being able to make a decision having done so. The second example relates to the way in which the Bill Street matter was handled, where meetings were called with the Burundara community, and our mayor and council were not even invited to those meetings. When concern was expressed to the local member about the fact that neither the mayor nor the ward councillor were invited, agreement was reached that they could in fact attend, which they ultimately did. When they attended that meeting, they were prevented from speaking. They were muted and not given the opportunity to speak. So we had our community there, we had the ward councillor and the mayor there, and the people from Homes Victoria were controlling the meeting and not allowing our representatives, our community representatives, to actually engage in conversation either with the department or with our community about their concerns. That is the sort of experience, I guess, which leads us to the statement made in the report.
Councillor Franco.
I do have another question in relation, if that's okay, Chair.
Sure. Yep.
I can understand the proposed response to item 1, let's say, of the compact. I don't know how best to describe it. I'm a little bit unsure as to the approach taken in the report in relation to the issue of point 4, promoting social and affordable housing, and secondly, I think it was either item point 2, which involved the state's commitment to consultation. And in the report, we highlight the fact that examples of where the state hasn't consulted, in council's view, adequately, but then we reject the offer of the state in relation to that particular point as not genuine, seemingly, and so we say, well, that's not adequate. Yet the state's coming and saying they're in terms of communication and in terms of compliance with local planning law as well. We've pointed out examples of where the state has introduced alternative planning provisions to allow, more dense or more intense development. But they're coming with a proposal saying, well, they're proposing to commit to that. So in relation to that aspect, why reject that? I do understand the overarching issue of point 1 in relation to why reject, the trying to put the onus on local government for public housing, but I don't so much understand the rejection, despite their past failures, if that's how it's going to be described, if the state's coming through and saying, well, we're prepared to commit to these examples in terms of consultation, in terms of commitments, and in terms of complying with local planning provisions. Perhaps someone could explain the approach we're taking in relation to those points.
Mr. Storer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the point we're making is that what the state has done, both at Markham and at Bill Street, is to describe itself as having undertaken consultation. And our concern is that that doesn't go anywhere near the level that we would expect for consultation, either with council or between council and its community for that matter. So I think what we're saying is we don't actually have confidence about the way in which the state uses that word, consultation, as to how it will play out in practice. Perhaps another example which causes that concern is that when we've had conversations with the state in relation to the design of these projects, we've asked to see the report prepared by the Office of the Victorian Government Architect, who has looked at the proposal independently, and we are refused access to that report. And yet the state will say it has consulted council in relation to the plans. So these are just some of the examples, I guess. It's probably more a question of not having confidence about how that word consultation will in fact be applied.
Okay, Councillor Franco, does that exhaust your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth, and then, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question may also be for the CEO, and it's relevant to questions that have been asked by Councillor Franco. On page 4, the last paragraph, it talks about the draft compact promises local government that it will ensure housing developments are fully integrated into the local landscapes. What's your perspective on a promise like that?
It would be fair to say, through you, Mr. Chair, that Council's determination as to what that looks like in practice has been different to the way the state has resolved its designs for its projects. We found, for example, with regard to both projects, the building heights are greater than Council had really desired for those sites. We've also seen that with regard to Bill Street, we looked at some car parking that was available to the broader community on that site. Yes, it was state-owned land, but in fact had been used by the community for parking for many years. That car parking was lost. And of course, some vegetation was also lost as part of the project. I think that we would take a different view to how the design of these projects should be pursued, having regard to the way we believe they should fit into the surrounding community.
Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth. And
thank you. Just one follow-up question, and this is more of an administrative question. With regard to the officer's recommendation, we're asked here to endorse a document that has already been sent. Mr. Searle, could you just talk about endorsing something that's already been provided?
Yes, as was said earlier, we've advised the MAV and Homes Victoria that we were responding at officer level to meet the timeframe, but that there would be a decision of this council which may or may not endorse what has been said. It is open to this council to choose not to endorse what's been said or to make changes. We've foreshadowed that to ensure that we kept faith with your right to make the decision in respect to this matter.
Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Bigger.
Thank you. I just have a question from the bottom of page 7. It states if council wants to develop a local agreement with Homes Victoria, MAV recommends that support is indicated for the compact. And I guess what my question is do officers believe that this currently right now is really the only opportunity to develop an agreement that might support social and affordable housing in Boroondara? Because of course we wouldn't want to be, close ourselves out on that opportunity to partner with the state government in future.
Through Mr. Chair, I might ask Carolyn to respond to that, but I guess Ms. McLean to respond to that. My initial response is that we should always have opportunities to try and work together collaboratively because we both care about the people we are discussing in this report. The question is how we come together to make it happen. But Ms. McLean might have something to add.
Thank you, and through the chair, Councillor Bigger, nothing in this report stops us working with the state government in the future. What we have done is raise the concerns that are within this document and have been discussed this evening. As we understand it, the MAV is going to be giving feedback to the state government that should include not only our own but other councils' feedback. So this is really just the process of feedback, and it definitely does not stop us working with state government in the future.
Great. Thank you. I'm happy with that.
Any other questions from councillors? I'm not seeing any, so I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Galt.
Recommendation. The officer's recommendation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Councillor Hollingsworth. Just to assist Councillor Galt, is there any opposition at this juncture? There doesn't appear to be. Councillor Galt.
In summarising the recommendation, I would really be going back through Fiona Brown's discussions with us tonight. I think she's covered it very, very well. All our concerns are there. We've discussed this in the past, and those concerns continue to exist. So I'd just like to recommend to my fellow councillors that we support the CEO in his original submission to state government and confirm that and endorse it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galt. On the basis that there doesn't appear to be opposition, I'm going to put that motion. Those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously, and we'll just arrange for Councillor Thompson to be brought back in.
Thank you, Councillor Park, for stepping into the chair's breach this evening. We'll move on to item 4, general business. Councillors, are there any items of general business this evening? There appears to be no items of general business. Are there any items of urgent business? There being no urgent business, any confidential business? There being none. I'd like to thank our members of the community who've been watching online. I'll declare the Urban Planning Delegated Committee meeting closed at 7:10 p.m. Thank you, everyone.